The stars glowed cold and far away as Captain Vexar examined the scanner data on his control deck. His golden eyes burned with pleasure as he watched the tiny dot on his display drift slowly through the void. The human trade vessel had been flying the same path for 3 days and didn't know that 12 Zapirian battlecruisers were hunting it through the black emptiness. Vexar's sharp claws clicked on his command seat as he considered how simple this raid would be. Humans were feeble beings who liked buying and selling more than combat. They made slow freight ships and packed them with precious cargo that they carried between their spread-out settlements. The Zapirian Empire had been attacking human ships for months, and never once had they met any real fight. The bridge of the Shadowclaw buzzed with soft movement as his warriors got ready for the surprise attack. Lieutenant Cax operated the gun controls while Navigator Hextor planned their strike pattern. They had done this many times with human ships, and it always finished the same way. The humans would give up right away and plead for mercy, while the Zapirians grabbed everything valuable from their storage areas. Far in front of the alien group, the human ship named Lucky Strike drifted through space at an even speed. Her metal skin was worn and marked from endless cargo trips between the far colonies. Power collectors stuck out from her sides like steel wings, and her single energy gun looked tiny and weak. Anyone seeing her would think exactly what she seemed to be, a basic merchant ship hauling farm tools to some distant planet. On the Lucky Strike's control room, Commander Jake Morrison stood with his arms crossed behind him, watching the starfield through the main display screen. He was a tall man with black hair and peaceful blue eyes that seemed to notice everything nearby. His clothes looked like normal crew wear, but something about how he moved suggested he was more than just a simple trader. Chief Engineer Lisa Caney worked at her station, checking what the ship's brain listed as cargo bay controls. She was a woman around 30 with short orange hair and fast fingers that moved over her switches with skilled ease. The numbers on her screen showed normal trading ship work, but if someone looked hard, they might see that some of her machines used more energy than they should. Radio Officer Ben Carter stayed at his post at the communication desk, watching for any messages coming in. He was young, with brown hair and sharp eyes that caught everything. The antenna array on top of the ship looked standard, but hidden inside its metal cover were detectors and transmitters that no civilian ship should have. Dr. Patricia Wells worked quietly in what the ship's records called the sick bay. She was getting ready equipment that looked like normal emergency medical gear, but had a completely different job. Her yellow hair was pulled back as she made last changes to machines that would soon show their real value. Combat Officer Amy Rodriguez sat at what seemed to be a simple steering console. She was a woman with dark hair and calm hands who looked totally relaxed, even with danger getting closer. Her control board looked normal, but buried under its surface were switches for weapons that could flatten whole cities. Morrison had been waiting for the Zapirian attack for days. Secret reports had told him that alien raiders were working in this area and going after human cargo ships. The Lucky Strike had been sent here just to meet these raiders and handle them in a way that would send a clear warning to anyone else who might think about attacking human ships. The rock field of Kepler 442 spread out in front of them like a maze of floating stones and wreckage. It was the perfect spot for a trap, because the big rocks would block long-distance sensors and make it impossible for any nearby ships to see what was happening. The Zapirians had picked their hunting area well, but they had made one deadly error in their thinking. They had believed that the Lucky Strike was exactly what she looked like. Morrison walked over to Caney's station and looked at her readings. Everything was set and waiting for his order. The ship's real systems were hidden behind fake walls and disguised as harmless cargo handling gear. Months of careful work had gone into making the Lucky Strike appear like a helpless merchant ship while hiding her true power. Carter turned in his chair and gave Morrison a small nod. The Zapirian fleet was moving in and would be ready to spring their trap in minutes. Their ships were flying in the usual raider pattern meant to surround and scare a civilian ship into giving up right away. The aliens had studied human merchant ships closely and knew exactly what to expect. They knew about human trade paths and cargo schedules. They knew that human traders liked profit more than fighting and would surrender instead of risking their lives protecting their goods. They had raided dozens of real merchant ships, and the result was always the same: What they didn't know was that the human defense program had been watching their actions and had created a response. The Ghost Ship project had been made just to deal with raiders who targeted civilian ships. Military vessels disguised as merchants would patrol the trade routes and wait for attacks that would let them strike back. Morrison returned to his command spot and watched the battle display as red dots showed up on the screen around them. 12 Zapirian warships were moving into attack formation and would soon demand their surrender. The aliens thought they were about to capture another helpless human cargo, ship and steal everything valuable from her holds. Rodriguez caught Morrison's eye and raised one eyebrow slightly. Her hand rested easily near her console, but she was ready to turn on systems that would change the Lucky Strike from prey into hunter in seconds. The change would be complete and crushing. The moment was almost here. Soon, the Zapirians would learn that not every human ship was what it seemed to be. They would find out that humanity had been getting ready for exactly this kind of meeting and had found ways to use their own methods against them. In the depths of space, 12 alien warships closed in on what they thought was an easy target. They had no clue that they were about to face something that would change everything they believed they knew about humans and their abilities in war. Captain Vexar grinned as his fleet moved into perfect attack formation around the human cargo ship. The Lucky Strike floated helplessly between two huge rocks, exactly where his spy reports had said she would be. Her energy readings showed nothing more dangerous than basic life support systems and a single weak plasma cannon that looked like it hadn't been fired in years. The Shadowclaw and her 11 sister ships spread out in a wide circle around their target. Each Zapirian ship was 3 times bigger than the human ship and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Their dark hulls gleamed with weapon openings and sensor arrays, while their engines glowed bright blue in the darkness of space. Lieutenant Cox studied his targeting systems and shook his lizard-like head in disappointment. The human ship showed no signs of advanced shielding or defense systems. Her hull was old and patched with metal plates that looked like they had been welded on by amateur mechanics. Solar collectors hung from her sides like broken wings, and her communication array was so old that it probably couldn't even send a distress signal fast enough to matter. Navigator Hextor confirmed what they all already knew. The Lucky Strike was completely surrounded with no chance of escape. The rocks blocked any retreat, while the Zapirian ships controlled every possible exit route. This would be another easy victory for the Empire and another example of human weakness for the rest of the galaxy to see. Vexar turned on his communication system and got ready to give the standard surrender demand. He had given this same speech to dozens of human captains, and they always responded the same way. First came denial, then fear, then desperate bargaining, and finally complete giving up. Humans were predictable creatures who valued their lives more than their cargo or their pride. On the bridge of the Lucky Strike, Commander Morrison listened to the alien message with the calm look of someone who had been expecting exactly this moment. The Zapirian captain spoke in broken human language with a voice full of arrogance and contempt. He demanded immediate surrender and threatened destruction if his orders were not followed within 60 seconds. Morrison looked around at his crew and saw the same quiet readiness in all their faces. Caney continued working at her engineering console as if nothing unusual was happening. Carter watched communication frequencies with professional attention to detail. Wells finished her preparations in the medical bay, while Rodriguez kept one hand near her tactical controls. None of them looked like frightened merchants facing certain death. They looked like soldiers waiting for orders. Morrison turned on his own communication system and responded to the alien ultimatum. His voice carried exactly the right mixture of fear and resignation as he identified himself as a simple cargo ship captain carrying farming equipment to the outer colonies. He begged the aliens not to hurt his crew and promised to cooperate fully with their demands. The performance was perfect. Vexar heard exactly what he expected to hear from a terrified human trader who knew he was completely outgunned and surrounded. The captain's voice shook with emotion as he asked for mercy and promised that his cargo holds contained nothing but agricultural, machinery and terraforming supplies. But there were details that didn't quite match what Vexar had seen in previous encounters with human merchants. The crew on the Lucky Strike moved with too much coordination and discipline. Their positions on the bridge seemed more tactical than commercial. The way they responded to their captain's orders suggested military training rather than civilian experience. Lieutenant Krex noticed something strange about the human ship's power distribution. Most merchant vessels would have shut down non-essential systems by now to conserve energy for life support. The Lucky Strike was running all her systems at normal levels, as if power consumption was not a concern. Her reactor output seemed higher than what a ship her size should need for basic operations. Navigator Hector studied the tactical display and frowned at what he saw. The human ship had positioned herself in the asteroid field with what looked like random chance, but her location actually provided some interesting defensive advantages. She could use the large rocks for cover, and her enemies would have to be careful about their firing angles to avoid hitting each other. The more Vexar studied the situation, the more he began to feel that something was not quite right. Intelligence reports had assured him that human merchants were easy targets who surrendered immediately when faced with overwhelming force. This crew seemed too calm and too organized for civilians who should be panicking in the face of certain death. Morrison continued his act as a frightened cargo ship captain while secretly monitoring his crew's preparations. Caney had powered up systems that were hidden so well that even close inspection would not reveal their true purpose. The Lucky Strike's real capabilities were concealed behind false walls and disguised as innocent merchant equipment. Wells activated combat medical protocols that would be needed very soon. Her medical bay contained treatment systems for injuries that civilian merchants should never expect to encounter. Everything was designed to support military operations while maintaining the appearance of routine commercial activities. Rodriguez ran final checks on weapon systems that didn't officially exist. Her navigation console was actually a tactical control station capable of coordinating attacks that could level entire fleets. The Lucky Strike carried enough hidden firepower to destroy every ship in the Zapirian formation. Carter prepared communication equipment that could broadcast on military frequencies across half the galaxy. When this encounter was over, the entire known universe would hear exactly what had happened to the aliens who had dared to attack a human vessel. The message would serve as a warning to anyone else who might consider humans to be easy prey. The 60-second deadline approached, and Vexar prepared to accept the human surrender. He planned to board their ship and take everything valuable while leaving the crew stranded in the asteroid field as a lesson to other merchants about the price of traveling through Zapirian space. Without paying proper tribute to the Empire, Morrison smiled slightly as he watched the countdown timer reach 0. The aliens had positioned themselves exactly where he wanted them. They were confident and unprepared for what was about to happen. In a few more seconds, they would learn that attacking human ships was the last mistake they would ever make. The 60 seconds expired, and Captain Vexar prepared to order his boarding parties to dock with the human vessel. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan, and the Lucky Strike would soon be another easy prize for the Zapirian Empire. His soldiers were already moving toward their assault craft when something made him pause and take a closer look at his sensor readings. The human ship was still broadcasting surrender messages and begging for mercy, but there was something different about her energy signature now. Small fluctuations in her power system suggested activity that didn't match what a frightened merchant crew should be doing. Most civilian captains would be shutting down everything except life support to show their complete helplessness. Lieutenant Krex suddenly looked up from his console with confusion written across his scaled features. The targeting computer was having difficulty getting a solid lock on the human vessel, even though she was sitting perfectly still between the asteroids. Something was interfering with their sensors in ways that should not be possible for a simple cargo ship. Navigator Hector checked his instruments twice before reporting what he was seeing to his captain. The Lucky Strike's hull configuration seemed to be changing in subtle ways that made no sense for a merchant vessel. Metal plates were shifting position, and what had looked like damage from countless cargo runs was actually some kind of adaptive camouflage system. Morrison waited until he was certain that the alien boarding craft were committed to their approach before giving the signal his crew had been waiting for. The time for deception was over, and the Lucky Strike was about to reveal her true nature to the galaxy. He looked at Rodriguez and nodded once. The transformation began instantly, and was more dramatic than anything the Zapirians had ever witnessed. False hull plating slid away with mechanical precision to reveal weapon ports that had been completely hidden moments before. The Lucky Strike's true configuration emerged as stealth systems powered down, and her real design became visible for the first time. What had appeared to be a defenseless merchant vessel was actually one of the most advanced warships in human space. The USS Phantom had been disguised so perfectly that even close inspection had failed to reveal her military nature. Her adaptive hull, plating had mimicked the appearance of an old cargo hauler while concealing weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Caney brought the ship's main reactor online, and power readings jumped to levels that made the Zapirian sensors scream warnings across their bridge. The fusion plant hidden in the Phantom's core was designed to power weapon systems that the aliens had never encountered. Energy flowed through conduits that had been disguised as simple cargo handling equipment. Rodriguez activated tactical systems that transformed her navigation console into a weapons control station capable of coordinating attacks across multiple target zones. The Phantom carried plasma torpedoes that could phase through enemy shields and quantum disruptors that could tear apart matter at the atomic level. Her defensive systems included adaptive shielding that could adjust to any known weapon type. Wells completed activation of the electronic warfare suite that would turn the aliens' own systems against them. The medical bay contained computers powerful enough to hack into enemy networks and reprogram their targeting systems. Within seconds, she would be able to make the Zapirian ships fire on each other instead of their intended target. Carter powered up communication arrays that would broadcast this encounter across the entire known galaxy. The message would reach every species within 50 light years and serve as a warning about what happened to those who attacked human vessels. The age of treating humans as easy prey was about to end forever. The Phantom's true shape was sleek and predatory, with weapon systems that seemed to grow from her hull like mechanical claws. Her engines glowed with contained fusion fire, while her shields shimmered with energy fields that could deflect anything the Zapirians might throw at her. She was a hunter that had been disguised as harmless prey. Captain Vexar stared in complete shock as his sensors registered the impossible transformation taking place before his eyes. The targeting computer was identifying weapon systems that should not exist on any civilian vessel. Energy readings showed a military fusion reactor with enough output to power a battle cruiser. The ship's hull was reconfiguring itself into an attack formation. The Shadow Claw's bridge erupted in chaos as officers tried to understand what they were seeing. Lieutenant Koch shouted warnings about massive weapon signatures, while Navigator Hextor reported that their tactical formation was now completely wrong for engaging a military target. They had positioned themselves to intimidate a merchant ship, not fight an advanced destroyer. Morrison's voice came across all communication frequencies, and his tone was completely different. Now the fear and resignation were gone, replaced by cold military professionalism that sent chills through every alien who heard it. He identified himself as Commander Morrison of the Terran Defense Force and explained that the Zapirians had just made the worst mistake of their lives. The Lucky Strike had never been a merchant vessel at all. She was the USS Phantom operating under deep cover as part of humanity's ghost ship program. Her mission was to locate and eliminate threats to human commerce while demonstrating that attacking civilian vessels would result in swift and devastating retaliation. Rodriguez brought weapons online and targeting systems, locked onto every Zapirian ship simultaneously. The Phantom could engage multiple targets with precision that would have been impossible for the aliens to imagine. Her computers calculated firing solutions that would maximize damage while minimizing the chance of any enemy vessel escaping to report what they had witnessed. The Zapirian Empire had based their entire strategy on the belief that humans were weak traitors who would surrender rather than fight. They had conducted months of successful raids against real merchant ships and grown confident that no human vessel posed any real threat to their operations. Intelligence reports had assured them that humans preferred profit to warfare. They were about to learn that intelligence reports could be wrong and that humanity had been preparing for exactly this kind of encounter. The Ghost Ship program had been designed to turn the aliens' own tactics against them and demonstrate that human space was protected by forces they could not see or predict. Morrison gave his final warning to the alien fleet before ordering his crew to show the galaxy why attacking human ships was the last mistake anyone would ever make. The battle began with a flash of brilliant light as Rodriguez fired the Phantom's first salvo of quantum torpedoes. The weapons moved through space like streaks of pure energy and passed through the Zapirian shields as if they didn't exist at all. The torpedoes were designed to phase shift at the moment of impact and detonate inside the target's hull, where no defensive system could stop them. Two Zapirian cruisers simply vanished in explosions of white fire that turned their hulls into expanding clouds of superheated gas and metal fragments. Captain. Vexar watched in horror as ships that had been there, one moment were completely gone the next. His sensors couldn't even detect debris from the destroyed vessels because the quantum weapons had reduced them to their basic atomic particles. Lieutenant Cax frantically worked his weapons console trying to target the human ship, but the Phantom was no longer where his sensors said she should be. Morrison had ordered Caney to transfer all power from the stealth systems to engines and shields. The human vessel moved through space with impossible speed and grace, while Zapirian targeting computers struggled to track something that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The Phantom danced between enemy weapons fire like a deadly ghost that couldn't be touched. Her adaptive shielding absorbed the few shots that managed to connect, while her hull plating shifted color and texture to confuse optical targeting systems. She was a predator designed to hunt in the darkness between stars, while her prey fumbled blindly trying to land a killing blow. Navigator Hextor screamed warnings as 3 more Zapirian ships fell victim to the human weapons. The quantum disruptors tore through their hulls at the molecular level, while plasma torpedoes melted armor plating that should have been able to withstand direct hits from small asteroids. Nothing in their arsenal seemed capable of stopping the human attack. Wells activated the electronic warfare systems and began her assault on the alien computer networks. The Zapirian ships used interconnected tactical systems that allowed them to coordinate their attacks and share targeting information. This connectivity was designed to be their greatest strength, but Wells turned it into a fatal weakness within seconds. Virus programs flowed through the alien networks like digital poison and began rewriting command codes at the most basic levels. Zapirian targeting computers suddenly identified their own ships as enemy vessels, while navigation systems began plotting collision courses with nearby asteroids. The aliens found themselves fighting their own equipment as much as the human destroyer. 2 more enemy vessels collided with each other when their navigation systems failed simultaneously. The impact cracked both hulls and sent them spinning into the asteroid field where they broke apart against the massive rocks. Another ship fired its main guns at what its computer insisted was a human target, but actually hit its own flagship's generators. The Shadowclaw shuddered under friendly fire from her own escort vessels, while Vexar tried desperately to regain control of the battle. His fleet was falling apart faster than he could give orders, and the human ship continued to move through his formation like an unstoppable force of destruction. Every weapon he fired seemed to miss, while every human shot found its target with deadly precision. Carter had been monitoring alien communication since the battle began, and he could hear the panic in their voices as they realized they were completely outmatched. Zapirian officers shouted contradictory orders while their captains begged for reinforcements that would never arrive. The Empire's finest fleet was being systematically destroyed by a single human vessel. Morrison watched the tactical display as red dots representing enemy ships continued to disappear from his screen. The Phantoms. Computer calculated that the battle would be over within 8 more minutes at the current rate of destruction. Not one of his crew had been injured while the Zapirian fleet was being reduced to cosmic debris. Caney redirected power to the main weapons as Rodriguez prepared for the final phase of the engagement. The remaining alien ships were trying to form a defensive formation, but their damaged systems made coordination impossible. Half of their vessels were firing at shadows, while the other half couldn't tell friend from foe. The Phantom struck again with a concentrated barrage that targeted the enemy command ship's vital systems. Quantum torpedoes phased through the Shadowclaws. Shields and detonated in her engine room while disruptor beams carved through her weapon ports. The flagship's main reactor went critical and filled the bridge with alarms that no one could silence. Vexar felt his ship dying around him as bulkheads buckled and atmosphere began venting into space. His crew was abandoning their posts and running for the escape pods while fires spread through corridors that had been breached by human weapons. The pride of the Zapirian Navy was falling apart like a toy that had been stepped on by a giant. Wells completed her electronic assault by uploading a final virus that would broadcast surrender messages from every remaining alien ship. The Zapirian vessels began transmitting their own destruction as they begged for mercy that would not be granted. Their tactical networks collapsed entirely and left each ship fighting alone against an enemy they couldn't see or understand. Rodriguez fired. The last salvo that ended the Battle of Kepler 442, as historians would later call it. The remaining Zapirian ships exploded one by one in brilliant flashes of light that illuminated the asteroid field like fireworks. Metal fragments bounced off the massive rocks while expanding gas clouds slowly dispersed into the vacuum of space. In less than 10 minutes, 12 warships of the Zapirian Empire had been reduced to scrap metal and atomic particles. The aliens, who had expected an easy victory over helpless human merchants, had instead encountered military technology that was centuries beyond anything they possessed. Their superior numbers and heavy weapons had meant nothing against human tactics and engineering. Morrison looked around his bridge at crew members who had just won the most one-sided victory in recorded galactic history. Not a single system on the Phantom had been damaged, and no human lives had been lost. The ghost ship had performed exactly as designed and sent a message that would echo across known space for generations to come. The silence after the battle was broken only by the sound of debris hitting the asteroid field, as pieces of destroyed Zapirian warships drifted through space like metal snow. Commander Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Phantom and watched the tactical display show nothing but empty space where 12 enemy vessels had been floating just minutes before. The ambush that was supposed to capture a helpless human cargo ship had instead resulted in the complete destruction of an entire alien battle fleet. Carter worked at his communication station preparing to broadcast a message that would reach every listening post and relay station within 50 light years of their position. The recording equipment captured every detail of what had just happened, including the tactical data that showed how quickly and completely the Zapirian ships had been eliminated. This information would spread through the galaxy faster than the fastest ship could travel. Morrison activated the wideband transmitter and began speaking in a calm, professional voice that carried the authority of someone who had just proven that humanity was not the weak species that most aliens believed them to be. He identified himself as Commander Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Force and explained that the Lucky Strike had never been a merchant vessel at all, but rather a military ship operating under deep cover. The camera system recorded Morrison as he stood on his bridge with his crew working quietly at their stations behind him. These were not frightened traders who had gotten lucky in a fight against superior numbers. They were professional soldiers who had planned and executed a perfect military operation designed to send a message that would be heard across known space. Morrison gestured toward the main view screen that showed the debris field where the Zapirian fleet had been destroyed. He explained that the aliens had made the mistake of believing intelligence reports that described humans as peaceful merchants who would surrender rather than fight. Those reports had been deliberately created to hide humanity's true military capabilities from potential enemies. The Phantom had been one of dozens of ghost ships operating throughout human space, disguised as civilian vessels while actually carrying enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. The program had been created specifically to deal with raiders and pirates who targeted what they believed were defenseless cargo ships. Today had been the first time that a ghost ship had encountered a major alien military force. Caney powered down the combat systems and began the process of returning the ship to her merchant vessel disguise. The false hull plating slid back into position while weapon ports closed, and the adaptive camouflage system made the Phantom look like the old cargo hauler Lucky Strike once again. Within minutes, no casual observer would suspect that she was anything other than what she appeared to be. Wells completed her final electronic warfare tasks by uploading virus programs into the wreckage of the alien ships. Any attempt to recover data from the destroyed vessels would trigger additional programs designed to erase evidence of human technology while broadcasting more surrender messages. The Zapirian Empire would learn about their defeat, but they would not discover exactly how it had been accomplished. Rodriguez secured the weapon systems and returned her console to navigation mode. while Carter prepared multiple copies of the battle recording for transmission to every major communication hub in this sector of the galaxy. The message would be broadcast on civilian frequencies as well as military channels to ensure that both governments and private organizations received the warning. Morrison continued his recorded message by explaining that humanity did not seek war with any species, but would not tolerate attacks on human vessels or colonies. The destruction of the Zapirian fleet was not an act of aggression, but rather a defensive response to an unprovoked assault on what the aliens believed was a civilian cargo ship carrying farming equipment to the outer colonies. The recording included tactical analysis that showed exactly how the human weapons had penetrated Zapirian shields and armor. The quantum torpedoes had phased through defensive systems that should have been able to stop conventional weapons, while the disruptor beams had torn through hull plating at the molecular level. No known defense could stop these weapons once they were fired. Carter began transmitting the message to communication relays throughout the local star systems. Within hours, every major government and military organization would know that humanity possessed technology far beyond what they had previously demonstrated. The myth of human weakness would be replaced by a reputation for devastating military capability. Morrison addressed the recording directly to any species that might be considering attacks on human vessels. He warned that the Ghost Ship program had placed military vessels disguised as merchants throughout human space, and that any attempt to raid civilian shipping would result in the same fate that had befallen the Zapirian fleet. Humanity would defend itself with overwhelming force. The message also contained an offer of peaceful cooperation with any species that respected human sovereignty and treated human vessels with appropriate diplomatic courtesy. Morrison emphasized that humanity preferred trade and exploration to warfare, but was fully prepared to defend itself against any threat. The choice of peace or war would be left to the other species of the galaxy. Wells activated a final transmission that would be broadcast continuously from automated beacons throughout the asteroid field. Any ship that entered this system would receive detailed information about what had happened here, including tactical recordings that showed the complete destruction of 12 alien warships by a single human vessel. The battle site would become a monument to human military capability. The USS Phantom completed her transformation back into the Lucky Strike and resumed course toward the outer colonies as if nothing had happened. Her cargo hold still contained the farming equipment listed in her manifest, while her crew returned to their cover identities as civilian merchants. The Ghost Ship would continue her mission until called upon to defend humanity once again. Within days, the recording of Morrison's message had reached every major civilization in the galaxy. Some species dismissed it as propaganda, while others began immediate reviews of their threat assessments regarding human capabilities. The Zapirian Empire never recovered from the loss of their elite fleet and abandoned all plans for further raids on human shipping. More importantly, the galaxy learned that humanity was not the weak species that intelligence reports had suggested. Human ships were no longer considered easy targets, and the Ghost Ship program expanded to include more military vessels operating under civilian disguises. The reputation for strength that humanity gained from the Battle of Kepler 442 protected human lives and commerce for generations to come.